The Awakening. The sun beat down mercilessly on the barren desert, its golden rays making the sands shimmer like molten gold. Daniel Carter, a young archaeologist with dusty boots and a determined heart, wiped the sweat from his brow. The dig site was quiet, save for the occasional clink of his tools against the hardened earth. He had been here for weeks, following rumors of an ancient artifact buried deep beneath the dunes. Most of his colleagues dismissed his theories as fantasy, but Daniel wasn't like most people. He believed there was more to Earth's history than anyone dared to imagine. He had found strange carvings in a forgotten temple that hinted at something far older than human civilization. Those symbols had led him here, to this desolate wasteland. Today felt different. His instincts buzzed with excitement, a strange feeling that something extraordinary was close. As he dug deeper, his trowel struck something hard. His heart skipped a beat. Carefully he brushed away the sand, revealing a metallic surface engraved with intricate symbols that glowed faintly under the sunlight. "What is this?" Daniel whispered to himself, awe creeping into his voice. The object was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was smooth yet otherworldly, its surface cool to the touch despite the scorching heat around him. The carvings seemed to shift slightly, almost as if they were alive. Daniel's hands trembled as he lifted it from the ground. The artifact was oval-shaped, about the size of a football, and pulsed faintly with a dull blue light. Suddenly, the artifact vibrated. Daniel almost dropped it in shock. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The ground beneath him trembled. "What the hell?" Daniel muttered, his voice cracking. He stumbled backward, clutching the artifact tightly. Before he could react, the artifact emitted a blinding flash of light. Daniel felt an intense heat envelop him, and the world around him seemed to dissolve into nothingness. For a brief moment, he thought he was dying. Then, as quickly as it started, it was over. When Daniel opened his eyes, he found himself lying on the sand, the artifact still clutched in his hand. But something was different. The air felt charged, electric. The light of the artifact had dimmed, but its surface was warm now, as if it were alive. A shadow fell over him. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as he looked up. Standing before him was a figure, tall, slender, and glowing faintly with an ethereal light. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, and her eyes burned with a golden radiance. She wore what looked like a flowing robe made of pure energy, and her hair floated around her as if caught in an invisible breeze. Daniel scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. "Who? What are you?" The figure tilted her head, her lips curling into a small smile. Her voice was melodic, almost hypnotic, as she spoke. "You have awakened me, mortal. I am Cyrillax, the last of the Arcanists, a race long forgotten by your kind." Daniel blinked, struggling to process her words. "Awakened you? I don't understand. What is this artifact? Why were you inside it?" Cyrillax stepped closer, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "This artifact is my prison and my sanctuary. Eons ago, my people were hunted to extinction. I alone survived, sealed away to escape the destruction. And now, after countless millennia, you have set me free." Her words sent a shiver down Daniel's spine. He wanted to feel triumphant, but there was something unsettling about her presence. She radiated power, an overwhelming force that made the air around her hum with energy. "You said I awakened you," Daniel said cautiously. "What does that mean? What do you want from me?" Cyrillax's smile widened, revealing sharp, almost predatory teeth. "To fully regain my strength, I need energy. Your energy, to be precise." Daniel took a step back, his pulse quickening. "My energy? What does that mean? Are you going to hurt me?" Her expression softened, though her glowing eyes remained unreadable. "Fear not, mortal. I do not wish to harm you. Your energy is abundant, and I only need a fraction to restore myself. In return, I shall protect you. You have my gratitude for freeing me from my prison." Before Daniel could respond, the ground shook violently. A deafening roar echoed across the desert, and a crack of thunder split the sky. Dark clouds began to gather, swirling ominously above them. Cerelax's eyes narrowed as she looked toward the horizon. "It seems my awakening has not gone unnoticed. My enemies are near." "Enemies?" Daniel stammered, panic rising in his voice. "What enemies? What's happening?" She turned to him, her expression serious. "You have unleashed a force far greater than you can comprehend, Daniel Carter. Prepare yourself, for your world will never be the same again." The part ends with the sound of distant explosions and the ominous glow of strange lights in the sky, leaving Daniel to wonder if he has made the biggest mistake of his life. The goddess's hunger. The desert was eerily quiet after the storm, the unnatural clouds lingering like silent witnesses to something ancient and forbidden. Daniel sat against the wreckage of his tent, his body aching and his mind racing. Cerelax, the alien goddess, stood nearby, her silver glow dimmed but still unmistakable. She gazed at the horizon, as if sensing something beyond human perception. Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. "What did you mean by enemies? Who are they?" Cerelax turned slowly, her golden eyes locking onto his. "The Zrithun hunters. They are the remnants of those who sought to annihilate my kind. They destroyed everything I loved, my people, my home." Her voice softened, carrying a strange mix of sorrow and resolve. "When I was sealed, it was not only to protect myself, it was to keep them from finding me. And now, they will come." Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. He had unearthed something far beyond his understanding, something that might bring destruction to everything he knew. Yet despite the fear gnawing at him, a strange fascination kept him rooted to the spot. "Why Earth?" Daniel asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Why would you hide here?" Cerelax tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Your planet is unique. It hums with life, raw and vibrant. The energy of this place masked my presence. And now, you. Me." Daniel's voice cracked. He stood up, his legs unsteady. "What does that mean?" Her glowing gaze softened as she stepped closer, her presence both calming and unnerving. "You have a rare vitality, Daniel, a spark that resonates with the power of the universe. That spark awakened me, and it sustains me." Daniel backed away instinctively, his heart pounding. "Wait, what do you mean sustains? What are you doing to me?" Cerelax raised a hand, her fingers glowing faintly. "You've already felt it, haven't you? The fatigue, the dreams, visions of places you've never been. It is merely a fraction of the bond we share now. Without your energy, I cannot fully awaken." Daniel stared at her, a mix of fear and confusion swirling in his mind. "You're draining me." "Not draining," she corrected. "Sharing. I take only what I need, nothing more." But Daniel wasn't convinced. He thought about the strange dreams that had plagued him since her awakening. Visions of alien worlds, battles waged among stars, and a shadowy figure that seemed to follow him. He also remembered how weak he had felt after the storm, as if his body was running on empty. "I don't know if I can trust you," he said, his voice trembling. Cerelax's expression grew serious. "Trust is irrelevant. You are bound to me now, Daniel. Together, we stand a chance against what is coming. Alone, you will perish, as will everyone you care for." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Daniel clenched his fists, trying to steady his breathing. His instincts screamed to run, but deep down, he knew there was no escaping this. He had unleashed something far beyond his control, and now he was caught in the web of its consequences. Before he could respond, the sky rumbled again. This time, it wasn't thunder. A distant hum, low and menacing, echoed across the desert. Cerelax stiffened, her glowing form brightening slightly. "They are here," she said, her voice a sharp whisper. Daniel followed her gaze to the horizon. At first, He saw nothing. Then, slowly, shapes began to emerge. Sleek, metallic drones hovering in the distance. Their surfaces shimmered, reflecting the harsh desert sun, and their movements were unnervingly precise. "What do we do?" Daniel asked, panic rising in his chest. Ceralax extended a hand toward him. "Stay close to me. I will protect you." Daniel hesitated for a moment before taking her hand. The instant their skin touched, he felt a surge of energy flow through him, warm, powerful, and overwhelming. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he saw something beyond reality. A star collapsing, galaxies spinning, and a battle that seemed to stretch across time itself. Then he was back in the desert, his heart racing. Ceralax's glow intensified, and with a wave of her hand, the ground beneath them trembled. The drones closed in, their movements swift and deliberate. One of them emitted a piercing beam of light, aiming directly at Ceralax. But before it could strike, she raised her other hand. The air around them warped as an invisible force rippled outward, slamming into the drone, and sending it crashing to the ground in a fiery explosion. Daniel shielded his eyes from the blast, his ears ringing. Ceralax turned to him, her expression calm but urgent. "We must leave. This is only the beginning." "Leave? Go where?" Daniel shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. She looked at him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. "To survive, we must move. Trust me, Daniel. Your world depends on it." As they began to flee, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that his life had spiraled into something he could never escape. And though he didn't trust Ceralax completely, one thing was clear. Whatever was coming, he was now a part of it. The part ends with Ceralax leading Daniel into the unknown, the hum of more drones growing louder in the distance, and the ominous realization that their battle was far from over. The hunt begins. The air was thick with tension as Daniel and Ceralax moved through the rugged desert terrain, leaving the crash site far behind. Ceralax's glowing form flickered faintly, as though her energy reserves were running low. Daniel trudged behind her, his legs heavy and his mind clouded with exhaustion. Every step felt harder than the last. "You're slowing down," Ceralax said without turning, her voice calm yet commanding. Daniel glared at her back. "Maybe it's because I didn't plan on being hunted by alien death machines today." Ceralax stopped abruptly and turned to face him. Her golden eyes glowed with an intensity that made Daniel feel like an insect under a magnifying glass. "The Zrithan hunters will not stop. They will track my energy signature until either I am destroyed or they are. You must keep up, or you will die." Daniel opened his mouth to argue but stopped when a high-pitched whine filled the air. It was faint, almost like the buzz of an insect, but it carried an unnatural sharpness that sent chills down his spine. "They found us," Ceralax said grimly. Daniel's heart raced as he scanned the horizon. At first, he saw nothing. Then, far in the distance, a metallic shape glinted in the sunlight. It hovered for a moment before darting forward with terrifying speed. "Run," Ceralax ordered, grabbing his arm and pulling him into a sprint. Daniel's legs screamed in protest, but adrenaline pushed him forward. The drone closed the distance rapidly, its sleek, metallic body cutting through the air like a blade. A sudden burst of energy shot out from it, scorching the ground mere inches from Daniel's feet. "I'm not going to make it," he shouted, stumbling as the ground shook beneath him. "You will," Ceralax said, her voice steady. She raised a hand, and the air around them shimmered. A translucent barrier formed just as another energy blast struck, dispersing the impact in a brilliant flash of light. The effort seemed to take a toll on her. Ceralax staggered slightly, her glow dimming even further. "We need cover," she muttered, scanning the area. Daniel pointed to a narrow ravine up ahead. "There, we can lose it in the rocks." They bolted toward the ravine, the drone firing relentlessly behind them. Its precision was terrifying. Every shot narrowly missed, sending shards of rock and sprays of sand into the air. As they reached the ravine, the walls closed in around them, offering a temporary reprieve. The drone's buzzing grew distant, but Daniel knew it wouldn't give up so easily. He collapsed against the rock face, gasping for breath. "Is this how it's going to be?" he panted, "running and hiding while those things hunt us down." Ceralax leaned against the opposite wall, her expression unreadable. "For now, yes, but we will not run forever." Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow, his frustration boiling over. "You keep saying we, but let's be clear. You're the one they're after. I'm just some unlucky guy who got caught up in this mess. Why don't you just leave me out of it?" Ceralax's eyes softened slightly, though her tone remained firm. "You are more than an unlucky guy, Daniel. You are my tether to this world. Without you, I would not have the strength to fight them." Daniel's head snapped up. "Fight them? You mean destroy them? Why didn't you say that earlier?" "Because you are not ready," she said simply. Before Daniel could respond, a sharp metallic clanking echoed through the ravine. His stomach dropped as he turned to see another drone crawling over the rocks above them. Unlike the first, this one was larger, with jagged limbs that clung to the walls like a spider. "It's adapting," Ceralax said, her voice low. The drone lunged, its limbs scraping against the stone as it descended. Ceralax stepped forward, her hands glowing as she prepared to attack. But as she summoned her energy, she faltered, her body flickering like a dying flame. Daniel realized in horror that she couldn't hold it off alone. Without thinking, he grabbed a large rock and hurled it at the drone. It clanged harmlessly off its metallic shell, but it drew the machine's attention. "Over here, you tin can," Daniel shouted, his voice trembling with both fear and determination. The drone shifted its focus to him, its glowing red eye locking on. It reared back, preparing to strike. But in that moment, Ceralax unleashed a desperate surge of energy. A wave of force erupted from her, slamming into the drone and sending it crashing into the rocks. The drone twitched for a moment before going still. Ceralax collapsed to one knee, her glow barely visible now. "Why did you do that?" she asked, looking at Daniel with a mix of surprise and concern. Daniel shrugged, his chest heaving. "I wasn't just going to let it kill you. Besides, I figured you'd do the same for me." Ceralax studied him for a moment before nodding. "You are braver than you realize, Daniel, but bravery alone will not be enough." "What now?" Daniel asked, his voice tired. Ceralax pushed herself to her feet, her golden eyes flickering with determination. "Now we prepare. They will send more, stronger ones. If we are to survive, you must be ready to face them by my side." Daniel wanted to argue, to tell her he wasn't a fighter. But deep down, he knew she was right. Whether he liked it or not, he was part of this now. The part ends with Daniel staring out of the ravine, the distant hum of more drones filling the air, and the sinking realization that their fight was just beginning. Allies or enemies? The cold fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead as Daniel opened his eyes. He was lying on a cot in a small, sterile room with metallic walls and no windows. His body felt heavy, his head pounding with the remnants of exhaustion. The last thing he remembered was Ceralax leading him through the ravine. Now she was gone. He tried to sit up, but a sharp voice stopped him. "Easy there, hero. You've had a rough couple of days." Daniel turned to see a man standing in the doorway. He was middle-aged, with a close-cropped haircut and a no-nonsense expression. His military uniform was crisp, the name tag reading Colonel Briggs. "Where am I?" Daniel croaked, his throat dry. "You're in a classified facility," Briggs replied, stepping into the room. "And before you ask, no, we're not the bad guys. We're the ones keeping Earth safe from things like her." Daniel's heart sank. "Her? You mean Ceralax?" Briggs nodded, crossing his arms. "We've been monitoring unusual energy signatures across the globe for years, but whatever you dug up out there is off the charts. Care to explain what you were thinking?" Daniel glared at him, his frustration outweighing his fear. I wasn't trying to summon an alien goddess, if that's what you're asking. I was doing my job. You know archaeology. Digging up artifacts, studying history, something you guys probably don't care about. Briggs didn't flinch at Daniel's tone. Instead, he pulled out a tablet and set it on the cot. On the screen was footage of Cyrillax, glowing faintly as she fought off the drones. Her energy blasts left the desert scorched, and her movements were as fluid as they were deadly. "She's dangerous," Briggs said flatly, "and you're the key to her power. That makes you a threat too." Daniel's stomach twisted. "She's not trying to hurt anyone. She's fighting those drones, the Zrithon hunters or whatever they're called. Isn't that a good thing?" Briggs leaned in, his expression hardening. "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, she's drawing them here. If she stays, Earth becomes their battleground. And let's not forget, she's feeding off you. What happens when you can't sustain her anymore? What happens when she decides humans make a good snack?" Daniel opened his mouth to protest, but hesitated. Deep down, he couldn't deny that something about Cyrillax unnerved him. Her power, her cryptic words, the way she needed his energy. It all felt too much, too fast. "She saved my life," Daniel said finally, his voice quieter. "And she'll endanger it again," Briggs replied. "Unless we stop her." Before Daniel could respond, the lights flickered, and a distant alarm began to blare. Briggs pulled a radio from his belt. "Status report." A voice crackled through. "We've got a breach. Unknown energy signature. Massive readings." "Sir, it's her." Daniel shot to his feet, his exhaustion forgotten. "She's here." Briggs grabbed his arm, his grip firm. "You stay put. If she's looking for you, that's exactly what we can't allow." But Daniel wasn't listening. He shoved past Briggs and bolted out of the room, his heart pounding. The facility was a maze of identical corridors, all bathed in red emergency lights. The sound of distant explosions echoed through the halls. He turned a corner and froze. Cyrillax stood in the middle of the corridor, her silver glow brighter than ever. Around her, soldiers lay unconscious, their weapons scattered across the floor. Her golden eyes locked onto Daniel. And for a moment, relief flickered in her expression. "You're safe," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "Come with me." Before Daniel could respond, Briggs appeared behind him, a weapon aimed directly at Cyrillax. "Don't move," he barked. Cyrillax didn't even flinch. "This facility cannot contain me," she said calmly. "I mean no harm, but I will not allow you to keep him from me." "Is that a threat?" Briggs growled, tightening his grip on the weapon. "It's a fact," she replied, her voice steady. Daniel stepped between them, his hands raised. "Everyone, just stop." "Cyrillax, what are you doing? Why are you attacking these people?" "They attacked first," she said simply. "I came to retrieve you, Daniel. Your world's survival depends on us working together. These people cannot see the greater threat." "She's lying," Briggs snapped. "She's using you, Carter. You think she cares about humanity. You're just a battery to her. And when you're drained, she'll move on to the next victim." Daniel looked between them, his mind racing. He wanted to trust Cyrillax, but Briggs's words echoed his deepest fears. Was he just a tool to her, or was she truly their best hope against the Zrithon hunters? "Daniel," Cyrillax said, her voice softening, "you awakened me for a reason. I will not betray that bond. But the longer we stand here, the closer the Zrithon come. Choose." The part ends with Daniel standing frozen, torn between the enigmatic goddess who saved his life and the hardened soldier who claimed to protect humanity. The corridor shakes as another distant explosion rumbles through the facility, signaling that time is running out. A desperate bargain. The city skyline burned in the distance, its once proud buildings reduced to flaming husks as alien crafts hovered ominously above. Daniel stood on the rooftop of an abandoned skyscraper, his fists clenched as he watched the destruction unfold. The Zrithon hunters had arrived in full force, and Earth's defenses were crumbling. Behind him, Cerelac stood motionless, her silver glow muted against the chaos. She had been silent for the last hour, her golden eyes fixed on the devastation below. "How many more have to die before you do something?" Daniel snapped, turning to face her. His voice was raw with anger and desperation. Cerelac's gaze shifted to him, calm yet piercing. "Do you think I do not feel their loss?" she asked. "Do you think I do not mourn for them?" "Then fight," Daniel shouted, his voice echoing in the empty air. "You have the power to stop this, so why are you just standing here?" Cerelac's expression didn't waver. "Because the cost is higher than you understand." "What cost?" Daniel demanded. "If you don't fight, they'll destroy us all." "What's worse than that?" Cerelac stepped closer, her presence radiating a quiet intensity. "If I unleash my full power, I will consume more than just energy. I will consume you, Daniel. Your life force is my anchor to this world. Without it, I cannot stand against this Rithon. And if I take too much, you will not survive." Daniel froze, the weight of her words hitting him like a physical blow. He had known she was drawing energy from him, but he hadn't realized how far it could go. You mean you'd kill me," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "If I am to protect this world," Cerelac said, her tone solemn, "it may come to that. I offer you a choice. Stand with me, knowing the risk, or walk away. I will not force this upon you." Daniel's mind raced. Walk away. Was that even an option? He thought about everything he had seen. Cities reduced to rubble, families torn apart, soldiers fighting a hopeless battle. He thought about Cerelac, the alien goddess whose power could turn the tide, but only if he was willing to sacrifice everything. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Why does it have to be me?" Cerelac tilted her head slightly, her glowing eyes softening. "Your energy is unique, Daniel. It resonates with mine in a way no other mortals could. You are not just a bystander in this. You are part of something greater." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Something greater? I'm just an archaeologist. I dig up old rocks and write papers no one reads. I'm not a hero." Cerelac stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "Heroes are not born, Daniel. They are made by the choices they face. And this is your choice." A deafening roar shattered the moment. Above them, one of the Zrithon ships unleashed a beam of energy that tore through the city, reducing an entire block to ash. Daniel flinched, the heat from the blast searing his face even from this distance. "You don't have time to doubt," Cerelac said, her voice urgent now. "The longer we wait, the more your people suffer." Daniel looked at her, his heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to save himself. But as he stared into her golden eyes, he saw something he hadn't noticed before, an unmistakable flicker of fear. Cerelac wasn't invincible. She was desperate, just like him. "What happens if we lose?" he asked. Cerelac's expression darkened. "Then your world will fall, as mine did, and I will return to the void, alone once more." Daniel took a deep breath, his chest tight with the weight of the decision. He didn't want to die, but he couldn't stand by and do nothing. Not when the stakes were this high. "All right," he said, his voice shaking but resolute. "Do it. Take what you need." Cerelac's eyes widened slightly, and for a brief moment, she looked almost sad. "You are braver than you know, Daniel Carter." She raised her hands, and the air around them began to hum with energy. A golden light enveloped Daniel, warm at first, but quickly growing searing hot. His knees buckled as the energy drained from him, his vision blurring. Through the haze, he saw Cerelac transform. Her silver glow intensified, becoming blinding as her body shifted. Her humanoid form expanded, her features taking on an otherworldly, almost celestial quality. Wings of pure light sprouted from her back, and the air around her crackled with power. As Daniel collapsed to the ground, barely clinging to consciousness, he heard her voice, no longer soft, but thunderous and commanding. This Rithon hunters will face their end, and I will ensure it. The part ends with Ceralax launching into the sky, her radiant form cutting through the darkness as the Zrithon ships begin to turn their attention toward her. Daniel lies on the rooftop, his strength fading, wondering if he will survive to see the battle's end. Battle of Titans. The sky was a canvas of chaos. Streaks of light tore across the heavens as Ceralax engaged the Zrithon fleet, her radiant form outshining even the sun. Each movement was precise, each strike devastating. Her energy beams ripped through the enemy ships, leaving smoldering wreckage tumbling to the earth. From the rooftop where Daniel lay, the battle seemed like something out of a dream or a nightmare. The air vibrated with the force of every explosion, and the sky alternated between blinding flashes of light and suffocating darkness. Daniel struggled to stay conscious. His body felt like it was being wrung dry, every ounce of strength siphoned to fuel Ceralax. His breath came in shallow gasps, and his vision blurred, but he couldn't look away. Ceralax's voice echoed in his mind, a thunderous yet melodic tone that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Stay with me, Daniel. I need you. We are almost there." "Almost where?" he mumbled weakly, his voice lost in the cacophony. But Ceralax didn't answer. She was too focused on the battle. Above, a massive Zrithon warship loomed, its hull gleaming with alien metals and bristling with weaponry. It dwarfed the smaller ships Ceralax had destroyed, and its cannons glowed ominously as they charged. Ceralax flew toward it, her wings of light trailing sparks that crackled through the atmosphere. The warship fired, and a beam of energy as wide as a skyscraper shot toward her. Ceralax raised her hands, summoning a shimmering barrier that absorbed the impact, but the force sent her spiraling backward. The warship didn't relent. Smaller drones swarmed out of its hull, circling Ceralax like vultures. They unleashed a flurry of energy blasts, each one testing her defenses. Daniel gritted his teeth, his fists clenching weakly. She can't handle that. Not alone. Through sheer willpower, he pushed himself up, his legs trembling beneath him. The rooftop swayed under his feet as his body threatened to give out, but he stayed upright. He had to. "Ceralax," he shouted, his voice cracking. Her glowing form faltered for a split second, as if she had heard him. The drones seized the moment, their blasts landing a direct hit. Ceralax cried out, her light flickering dangerously. "No," Daniel screamed, his heart pounding. He stumbled forward, his hands gripping the edge of the rooftop. He didn't know what he could do, but he couldn't stand there and watch her fall. Then something strange happened. The artifact, the one Daniel had unearthed in the desert, began to glow faintly in his pocket. He pulled it out, its surface warm against his palm. The intricate carvings on it shimmered, and a surge of energy coursed through him. "Daniel." Ceralax's voice echoed in his mind again, weaker this time. "The artifact. It's our connection. Use it." Daniel didn't know how to use it, but he gripped it tightly and focused. The carvings flared with light, and he felt a jolt of power flood his veins. His exhaustion faded slightly, replaced by a strange warmth. Above, Ceralax seemed to sense the change. Her glow steadied, and she turned her attention back to the warship. With a cry that shook the sky, she unleashed a beam of energy so intense it split the clouds. The drones disintegrated instantly, and the warship's hull cracked like glass under the force. But the Zrithon weren't done yet. From the heart of the warship emerged their leader, a towering insectoid figure encased in a shimmering exosuit. Its many eyes glowed with malevolence as it hovered toward Ceralax. "So the last of the Arcanists still clings to life," the Zrithon leader hissed, its voice carrying across the battlefield. "You should have stayed buried, goddess. This time, I'll make sure you never rise again." Ceralax didn't respond. She surged forward, meeting the leader head-on. Their clash was cataclysmic, sending shockwaves that rattled the city below. The Zrithon leader was fast, its movements almost imperceptible as it dodged Ceralax's strikes and countered with its own. Daniel watched in horror as Ceralax faltered again. The energy she had drawn from him wasn't enough to sustain her against this foe. "You can't give up now," he whispered, his grip tightening on the artifact. "Come on, Ceralax. Fight." As if hearing him, Ceralax unleashed a desperate attack, channeling every ounce of power she had left. The energy around her exploded in a blinding sphere, engulfing the Zrithon leader. When the light faded, both Ceralax and the leader were gone, swallowed by the void of their own power. Daniel collapsed to his knees, the artifact dimming in his hand. His heart sank. Had she sacrificed herself to end the battle? The part ends with Daniel staring at the empty sky, unsure if Ceralax is alive, or if her sacrifice was enough to save Earth. The faint hum of approaching Zrithon ships suggests the fight is far from over, leaving Daniel to wonder if he has the strength to continue without her. The ultimate sacrifice. The battlefield was silent. The towering Zrithon warship hung in the air like a bleeding wound in the sky, its hull cracked and smoking from Ceralax's final desperate attack. The drones that had swarmed the city lay scattered in heaps of molten metal, their once lethal precision now reduced to lifeless debris. Daniel stood alone on the rooftop, the artifact cold and silent in his hand. His body trembled from exhaustion, and his mind swirled with unanswered questions. Ceralax was gone, vanished in a burst of energy that had swallowed both her and the Zrithon leader. For a moment, the quiet felt like victory, but then the hum began. It was faint at first, a low vibration that grew steadily louder. Daniel turned toward the horizon, his heart sinking. More Zrithon ships were appearing, their dark silhouettes blotting out the stars. They were regrouping, preparing for a final assault. "Great," Daniel muttered, his voice hoarse. "We've barely survived round one. And now this." He looked at the artifact, as if it might offer answers. Its intricate carvings seemed dull, lifeless. Without Ceralax, it was nothing more than a relic, a reminder of what they had lost. "Daniel." The voice was faint, like a whisper carried on the wind. Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes scanning the sky. "Ceralax," he called out, his voice shaking. "Yes," the voice replied, stronger now. It echoed in his mind, familiar and commanding. "I am here, but I cannot hold on for long." Daniel's grip tightened on the artifact. "You're alive? Where are you?" "I thought you." "I exist in the energy field," Ceralax interrupted. "My physical form is gone, but my essence remains. The Zrithon leader is weakened, but his fleet is still a threat. I need your help to finish this." "My help?" Daniel said, incredulous. "How? I'm just a guy with a rock in his hand. You're the one with the godlike powers." Ceralax's tone softened. "You are more than you realize, Daniel. The artifact is not just a key, it is a conduit. Through it, we can combine our energy one last time. Together, we can end this." Daniel looked at the approaching fleet, then back at the artifact. His hands were trembling, and his mind screamed at him to say no. This was too much. He wasn't a hero, wasn't someone who could save the world. But then he thought of the people who had already died. The families torn apart, the cities reduced to rubble. If he walked away now, there would be no one left to fight. "What happens to me?" he asked quietly. Ceralax hesitated. "If we succeed, the energy surge will likely consume you. Your body cannot withstand what is required. But without you, Earth will fall." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "So, no pressure, huh?" The hum grew louder. The ships were close now, their weapons charging. Daniel could see the faint glow of energy cannons preparing to fire. He took a deep breath and held the artifact in both hands. "All right, let's do this." The moment the words left his lips, the artifact flared to life. Light erupted from its surface, wrapping around Daniel like a cocoon. He felt the familiar warmth of Ceralax's energy, but this time it was overwhelming, all-encompassing. His body ached, every nerve screaming in protest. But he held on. Above, the Zrithan fleet opened fire. Beams of energy rained down, obliterating everything in their path. But before the destruction could reach Daniel, a massive shockwave rippled outward. It wasn't just light, it was Cyrillax. Her form reappeared, larger and more radiant than ever. She wasn't bound by physical limitations now. She was pure energy, a celestial force that dwarfed even the Zrithan warships. Daniel felt himself fading, his consciousness slipping away as Cyrillax's power grew. But through the haze, he heard her voice one last time. "You have done well, Daniel Carter. Rest now. Your sacrifice will not be in vain." The light intensified, brighter than 1,000 suns. Cyrillax unleashed a final, devastating wave of energy that tore through the Zrithan fleet. Ships disintegrated in an instant, their pieces scattering across the sky like dying embers. The Zrithan leader's warship cracked apart, its core imploding in a burst of blue fire. When the light finally faded, the sky was clear. The Zrithan were gone. Daniel collapsed onto the rooftop, the artifact slipping from his grasp. His vision blurred, the world spinning around him. He could feel his life slipping away. But there was no fear, only a strange, peaceful warmth. In the distance, he thought he saw Cyrillax's glowing form descending toward him. Her voice, soft and comforting, whispered in his mind, "You are not forgotten, Daniel. Your name will be written in the stars." The part ends with Daniel's eyes closing as the first rays of dawn break over the horizon. The Earth is safe, but the cost has been great. The camera pans to the artifact, now dark and lifeless, lying beside him, a silent testament to the man who saved humanity.